Yep, you read that video title correctly. We're building terrain again, which we haven't done in a while. So I figured go big or go home. So this is building 40k terrain, big mountain. And that's coming right up. Welcome back, and it's great to have you here. If this is your first time here, here's what's up. If you want to improve your wargaming, make your tabletop battles more epic, and give your wargaming budget more power, then be sure to smash the subscribe button below and ding the bell. That way, you won't miss anything. Now, before we crack on to what you need to make this terrain, I just need to clear something up. When I say we're making big mountain, I mean we're making this big mountain. Not big mountain with science! For those of you that will get that reference. Although when Fallout Wasteland Warfare comes out, we might look into big mountain at some point in the future. Now, let's check out what you need to make this piece of terrain. Okay, so here's the things that we're going to use to make this mountain. We've got some foam board here, we've got a knife to cut it, we've got a hot wire foam cutter, we've also got some PVA glue, some acrylic gap filler, watered down PVA glue in a spray bottle. There's also some toothpicks or cocktail sticks or whatever they're called where you are. We've got some brushes for painting stuff with, we've got some paints and some medium for thinning down paints with. We've got more paints over here, and we've also got some black sand for basing it. So basically the plan is that we're going to build the structure of the mountain out of foam, stick it together, get it all shaped up, and there's going to be some Necron crystals sticking out of it because it wouldn't be a Necron mountain without Necron crystals. So that's why I've got these colors here for painting those up. We've also got some black, some gray, and some white paint here for the actual rock bits of the mountain. Now I'm pretty sure that's everything, and if you are using the hot wire foam cutter that we've made in a previous video, I recommend having a huge lot of batteries with you because it chews through batteries something horrid. Probably should revise that design at some point. So, let's get started. Okay, so the first step to making this mountain is to cut out some foam. Now, my foam is 30 mil thick, and I want my mountain to be about 240 millimeters high, so I need at least 8 layers of foam. So we want this thing to be fairly large as well. So I'm thinking I'm just going to cut a weird shape around here and use this whole section. And I might even, looking at this board, I'm probably going to end up using the entire board on this mountain. But it is a pretty big piece of terrain, so that's okay. So I'm just going to go something like that. And then just cut through it, not being particularly careful or even following my original line. And there I go, not following it again. Trying my best to follow it, but failing miserably. So that's about the size our mountain's gonna be. So now that we have our base shape, we're going to cut out progressively smaller bits of foam to build up in height. So I'm just gonna go here and cut around here, like so. So there's our next bit of foam, that bit. Cutting partway through and then snapping it off is a perfectly acceptable method as well. Starting to make them a bit smaller now. So I'm just going to cut that out straight. Seven. And we'll go that. 8. And that's all that's left of that bit of foam board, so I guess I'm going to have to buy another one of those. Good thing they're cheap. So now we have this huge stack of foam that you can't even see because it goes off the camera a little bit. So I'm actually going to adjust the camera so you can see it, and then we'll see what we're going to do next. Okay, so now we've got our stack of foam set up. I have organized it roughly into the order that I want. I'm not entirely sure if it'll work because there's a few gaps back here that you can't see, but we'll see how we go. So the next step is we need to kind of stick these bits together so that we can start shaping it to be a consistent shape. So I'm going to flip it upside down and flip that off to the side so that, well, so that we keep the order. And we get our toothpicks, cocktail sticks, whatever you want to call them, and we just start sticking them in. Yeah, you want to make it so that they're as center as possible, because obviously you can't cut through them very easily. So now you bring in your next bit and you kind of line up where you want it to go. I'm going to put mine about there, I think. And you press it down, but don't do that because the sticks will probably come through and stab you. Yeah, see? Imagine how exciting that would have been if I'd just done that and stabbed myself. I bet everyone would have thoroughly enjoyed that. And now they're nicely stuck together, but we can pull them apart to glue them properly later. Okay, so once you got that bit stuck down, you just get more toothpicks and you just stab them in here, there, and everywhere, trying to keep them as centered as possible, like so. That should be enough there. And you get your next layer of foam and you line it up roughly where you want. I might even line those points up, and we'll go there, and you have to press it down so that it's nice and tight, and you try as hard as you can not to stab yourself with the toothpicks as they come through. Try to get your toothpicks sticking up as straight as possible so that the foam actually goes down properly. And there we go, we have a stack of foam that's all pinned together. So now we are going to start carving it down. So to do this, I'm going to start by cutting off any massive overhanging bits like this bit here. Just take my knife through it like so. And you don't even have to cut all the way through because we are going to clean it up in a bit. Take that bit off. Take that bit off. Take this huge overhanging bit off the side off, and that bit can go too. Yeah, that's huge overhanging. So we're gonna clip that bit off. Bye bye. And basically, the idea is you carve it from the top, carving down, and then you come back and you carve it down. You just keep carving down small chunks of it until you have a mountain shape that you are happy with. And because it's hard foam, when you cut through a bit and then snap it off, it leaves really nice texture, which adds to the effect quite nicely. And you want to try to make it so that the lines are continuous going down the entire thing. You can have a couple of rocky outcroppings, but trying to get it as uniform as you can will help with the effect. If you catch a cocktail stick, that just makes it harder. Oh, and I snapped my blade. That's annoying. Try to avoid doing that, that's annoying. Because now I only have that much knife left. Oh yeah, that's gonna make this difficult. Oh, and there's why I snapped the blade. There's a bit of toothpick there. All the questions get answered in time. So I'm basically gonna finish this out and put a new blade in my knife if I can find one. And we'll be back to you once I have carved down most of the mountain. Okay guys, so I've more or less carved this face and I've started blending the different layers of foam together. And to do this, basically, you get a bit of razor blade, and say here where it comes down and then stops, although here I could probably actually get away with it because of the angle. But basically, you just take your razor blade and you run it along like so. And now, once we have stuck it together with our gap filler, that line where the two bits of foam board come together will completely disappear. And by running the blade along that, it pulls out long bits that are running up and down, which makes it look like water has run down the rock and has worn away, making it look fairly natural looking as far as the erosion is concerned. And I haven't really touched this side of it. So yeah, it's that simple. Over here, I'm gonna have to carve down here so that it's straight here and then blends in, because I do want a little bit of outcropping here for models to sit. When you're making this, you do need to think of how it's actually going to work on the battlefield as well, because I want models to be able to fight up here, because I think that'll look epic. And I also want a couple of spots going up the hill where models can stand as well for like snipers and whatnot. So I'm going to pretty much finish modeling it. That's all you really need to do. You just stack them up and then you carve it down. This foam, you can just put your fingernails into it and rip it, and it gives effects like you've got over here. Whereas if you use more of a knife, you get more looking like this sort of thing, and there's a bit of cleaning up to do here. And any bits where you can't quite get it to the line between the layers to disappear, you can go over that with filler later, just to fill it in and make it disappear well and truly, because filler, it looks like rock pretty well once it's set if you don't smooth it over heaps. So I'll finish that off, and then we will be ready to paint it pretty much. Bam! And it's all carved out, and it's looking like, well, a giant yellow rock at the moment. So now we need to stick the thing together. So basically, what I'm going to do is flip it upside down, and then I'm going to pry the bottom layer off. Oop. Pry that layer off. Put the rest of it to the side. Grab the gap filler, and we're just going to kind of slather the entire thing in gap filler. And it looks like mine is a little bit blocked, so that's going to be fun when it actually, you know, comes out. Oh, there we go. So you just want to lay down a nice amount of gap filler all over the surface, like so. Then you pry the next layer up, bring it over, and you want to line the toothpicks up so they go together the way that they were, which should be those two go together there. Just try to line as many of them up as you can, and then you press the whole thing together. And you do have some wiggle room to move it around a little bit. And we are going to go in with gap filler around where the foam bits all stick together later to make sure that it all comes together nicely. So you do that, then you do another layer. And you press it all down, putting a nice amount of weight on it. And now, once that's done, we're going to get our gap filler and run it just along the edges like so, and press it into them. And this will also help smooth out some of the bit to make it look less artificial and help blend the edges where the bits of foam come together. And if you have any bits like here where it kind of makes nearly a 90-degree angle, you just apply more gap filler there than you would elsewhere and fill it up and make it look reasonable. And remember, you always want any lines that are in the sculpt to be running up and down, because that's the way that any water or erosion would be running, just to add to the realism of it a bit. And you just do that everywhere that filler is needed, pretty much. Fill up all the gaps, let it set, and then you base coat it. Whatever you do, don't spray it to base coat it, because spray paints will melt your foam. So I will go ahead and finish that off and be back with you in a little bit. Bam! And it's all done, it's dried, I've base coated it. I had to put an extra layer of the filler on there just to try to hide some of the lines, which I don't know how well you can see, but there's still a couple of lines going across the face where the different layers of foam join together, but they're hidden a lot better than they were, and it's all base coated now. If you put your first layer of filler on and you find that you can still see it really clearly, just put another thin layer over the top and just try to blend it as well as you can. I wouldn't put any more than 2 on because it starts taking some of the texture away if you do. Now we're going to paint up the rock face itself. And for that, we've got some grey paint here. You grab your grey, we're going to grab our brush, and we're going to take a fair bit off it so it's just not globby. Not a dry brush, but just so that it's, yeah, like that. And then we're just going to lightly brush it across the surface. And this is where you want to make sure that you use different brush stroke angles to try to hide those lines a bit better, so that it breaks them up and makes them less obvious. And once you get that done all over, we will move on to doing a white dry brush just to do some nice highlights. And then we're going to add a little bit of color to make this more of a Necron themed mountain rock thing. Okay, so I finished up the grey, and how good is it looking now? It's looking like a big lump of grey mass, basically. So now we just need to put some white highlights on just to lighten it up a bit. And at the moment it kind of looks like a pyroclastic flow, which is, well, it's not quite the effect I was going for, but it still looks cool. It just means that it's, well, it's a huge solid lump of lava, I suppose. Which I might have to experiment with the sealer a bit more in the future to see what cool effects I can get out of it for the purpose of making lava, because that would be cool. But that's not what we're doing today. This is a big rock, and I suppose a pyroclastic flow is a big rock, so well done. So now we need to do some white highlights on it. So making sure that you wash your brush off, because you don't want to get anything in your white. Basically, we're going to make it pretty close to a dry brush. There, that should be good enough. And we're just going to ever so lightly brush that all over. And if you push harder on some areas and not as hard on others, it'll make it so that the highlight is inconsistent, which will help with hiding those lines as well. Possibly went on a bit thick there, but that's okay. So yeah, basically you just highlight it all over with the white, and then we're going to get onto some little fun witchcraft, so to speak. Or heresy, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so the white highlight is applied and it's looking pretty much like a big grey rock. So, as I've expressed before, I don't want a huge grey rock on my table because that's kind of boring. So we're going to jazz it up a bit. I have started making a whole bunch of Necron crystals, and I still have some of the green wash here. So to make it look like this rock contains a bit of the mineral that grows those crystals, around the spots where we're going to add the crystals, we're going to put a tiny bit of this green wash to just soak into some of the crevices. So you're going to want to water it down so it's a bit runnier than it would be because the medium makes it quite thick compared to if you just water it down with water. So where there's a lack of detail here, I'm going to put some there, so I'm just going to wash over that area lightly. Here, putting them where there are obvious lines from the foam, if there are any still left, can help break those lines up and make them less obvious as well. Of course, you could also colour this up a bit by not painting it as a big grey rock in the first place, painting it as some other coloured rock, or you could use flocks and things like that to add some colour as well. So that puts 4 sticking out. I think I'm going to go for 5. Not only will it add some colour to it, but it will also help to make it so that this big flat-ish face has a bit more going on there, which of course will make it more interesting. And try to make sure that they're not just circles, because that's kind of boring as well. Okay, so I now have my Necron crystals all painted up, and they're just about ready to go on. I had a bit of the scorpion green left from highlighting them, so I decided to just see how it would work, and I dry brushed a little bit over the areas where I'm going to be putting the crystals, as you can see. So I think I'll put this one up here, so I need to cut a bit off of it. Okay, so we are going to... Actually, I want that bit facing down, I suppose, or unless I take it all off. And because I broke my knife earlier and have not had a chance to go buy more blades for it, and I don't have any here, guess who doesn't have a long enough knife to do this properly? Ha! Success! It's not a smooth cut exactly, but I've seen worse. So basically we're going to stick that onto there with the assistance of a toothpick. So I'm going to stick the toothpick into this thing. And we want it to kind of go down there, so we're going to try to press it through, and yes, it goes through. And that doesn't look half bad. Although I do want to stick it down with some kind of adhesive so that it actually sticks there. So we can use wood glue for this because we don't need to worry about it drying, because the stick's going to hold it in there while it's drying, and the filler is quite thick. So we're just going to put this tiny bit on there, and hopefully that won't run everywhere. Push it on, and snap the stick in the process. And that's on there pretty well. So let's do another one. Maybe this one? Although I want this one to actually come out of the base, so we'll do that bottom one after we've stuck it to a base. Where there's that gap there, I may have to fill that and do a bit of painting there just to make it look like it's actually growing out of the rock face. Now we've still got 4 crystals left. We got 1 to put there after we put the base on it, because I want it to be kind of coming out of the base a little bit. So I guess the next step that we need is a base. So we'll put those to the side, and we'll find an appropriate section of the board to use as the base. How about that section? So we're just going to come around and trace around the entire thing like you would with any other piece of terrain. So basically, as always, you just drag your knife along where you've scored it, pressing down into it to have the knife cut through. And this will blunt your blade quite a bit, So make sure that you do this last if you have a limited number of blades, because you really need a sharp blade for cutting through the foam effectively. There we go. So now we have a base for our mountain. Now we just need to bevel off of the edges as we normally do. I just want to score a line around to get rid of these bumps from where I've cut other bases out of it. And you just take your knife and you start beveling off the edges. There we go, we now have a nice large base that it's going to go onto, and it fits on there quite nicely. So now we're going to bring in that crystal, and it's going to end up in there, but we're not going to use a toothpick in it because, well, the toothpick can't go through the MDF very easily. But we are going to cut this bit off, and we want to make it so it's almost a 90-degree angle, so that's what it is there. And that will come out like so. So we'll put that to the side, and we're going to grab our PVA. We're going to spread it all over the thing, like so. We're going to bring this thing in, and I'm going to use it to start spreading it out, like so. And now that's covered in PVA, so that's got some on it, which will be good. Then we're going to bring in a brush. I have misplaced the brush I usually use for glue, so I'm just going to make this my new glue brush. And you just spread it out all over the entire thing, making sure that you get glue right down to the edges, because we do want sand there, or flock, or whatever you're using to texture your base if you're putting a base on it. Of course, due to the size of it, basing it is entirely optional. The only reason I'm putting a base on it is because I want that crystal to be sticking out of the base, basically. So now we're going to bring our mountain back in and stick the whole thing down. Yep, that looks pretty good there. Then we're going to put a little bit of PVA glue just up the side of the mountain where our crystal is going to stick in. If it doesn't want to stay upright, then you use your toothpick to put a bit of a piercing into the side of the mountain. Then you snap the toothpick off because you don't have much room to play with. You insert the end that was snapped into the mountain, and then you slide the crystal up to it. And now you may have noticed that I've left the top blank. That's because I want some sand on there, and black is the color that I use for underdoing sand. So I'm going to put some more glue on there. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that no glue, or as little glue as possible, runs down the side, because the sand's not going to stick to a vertical face because it would just fall down the mountain. And now you want to have another piece of MDF down so you can collect your sand easily, or a big piece of paper or anything like that'll do. Oh, and I almost forgot. We also want to stick down our other 3 remaining crystals. Good thing I didn't end up actually forgetting that. And now we just need to add the sand to it all. So as you normally would, just sprinkle it over, and you can pick your model up. There's going to be quite a bit of weight on the base now. So, and you slide it around and you knock your crystals off. Given the sheer size of this thing, it might have been a good idea to wait until the mountain was glued down to the base before moving it. But, oh well, there you go. So, any of the spots where the sand hasn't stuck down because the glue dried before I got the sand to it, I'll fix those up. And we will have a look at the finished model. See you in a sec. Bam! So, there we go. That is the finished product, and how good is it looking? Actually, from where I'm looking, it's looking very, very white on the camera. But it's not that white when you actually look at it. So the last step that we need to do before we can set it aside to completely dry is just to seal it down with PVA and water in a bottle. This is watered down more than I usually would because I was getting blocked nozzles. And you literally just spray the entire thing over with your PVA and water, and it seals everything in there quite nicely. And a good way to keep your PVA and water from drying out, as well as keeping the actual sprayer bit of it in good condition, is to put a soft drink bottle lid on the container that holds the PVA and water, as it will seal it quite nicely, and they usually fit. At least it does in my case. And you can just toss the actual sprayer bit in a bucket of water, let it soak out overnight, get all the glue out of all the mechanical bits of it so that it doesn't stuff up. And then you can put this aside somewhere for it to set overnight, and in 12 hours or so, it'll be well and truly set, and everything will be locked in there, and it will be good to go. So there you go, that's how you make Big Mountain! But not that big mountain, this is more of a generic large mountain for any gaming table. It works fine. Now, like I said, if you don't want to have to add crystals and stuff, that's not the look you're going for, then I highly recommend painting it in some color other than grey, perhaps using a leopard spot technique to get a nice rock effect. Because if it's all just one uniform color, it looks a bit drab and boring. So yeah, you definitely want to make it look more interesting than that. Adding the crystals works really well for adding a bit of color and breaking up that grey, as well as helping to hide the lines from where the foam is stacked on top of one another, as you can see right there. I'm still not too sure about how adding the scorpion green around the crystals really worked out. I'm kind of in a love-hate relationship with that aspect of it at the moment, just because while it does add a nice effect, I'm not sure if I executed it all that well. Probably could have put a bit more effort into that and it would have come out a lot better. So, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so we know that you like it, so we can keep making stuff that you like. And if you have any ideas for anything wargaming related you'd like us to cover, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear about it. Oh, and I should also mention that we do have a Facebook page, so you should jump over to facebook.com/Ordnance WarGaming so that you can join in with this community. We post up wargaming stuff, all of our videos go up there, as well as the opportunity for you to give feedback on stuff. So if you make any terrain that we make, you could post pictures of it up there so that everyone can look at it and be amazed at how good of a job you did. So as always, if you want to improve your wargaming, make your tabletop battles more epic, and give your wargaming budget more power, then be sure to smash the crosshair and ding the bell. You'll subscribe and I'll be able to share with you more battle reports, terrain tutorials, and strategies to make your wargaming experience more epic. And I'll see you next time.